everyone, to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I am so excited to be talking to my friend Kelly Swanson today about how to move your presentation from good to epic. Kelly, welcome back to the show.
Hey, glad to be here. Hey, everybody.
Now, listen, I'm thinking that in order to be inducted into the Speaking Hall of Fame, you might need to have given an epic speech or two. Am I right?
Well, I'm hoping, or paid off the right people.
Tell me, how amazing was it to have received this honor from the National Speakers Association this past summer?
It was surreal. On one hand, every time the person from the committee called me, Jane, I thought they were going to ask for it back. I was like, are you going to take it back? I would even get there and go, okay, they're going to find a typo on my book. So it's just surreal. Like, how did this happen to me? But it was a neat moment because it just, wow, it honored. My husband said, Kelly, really enjoy this and really think about how hard you worked to get here and how you did it your way. And that was the neatest thing about it, Jane, was I did not do it a traditional way. I did it my way and it worked. And anyway, it's wonderful to have your peers that you've admired for years honor you in that way. And, but now I'm back to being regular Kelly again.
Your head has gone down in
Yeah.
size. Now
Yeah.
you
Not my hair.
not your hair. Now listen, I want you to tell everybody kind of your existing business model. What all have you got on the go? Uh, Talk a
Okay.
little bit about what your day-to-day is.
It's pretty complicated because there's a lot of moving pieces. The thing that drives me most is the keynoting. So keynoting from a stage as an artist. I always say being the artist drives everything because I can't do every spinning plate like it's a full-time job. For example, I also am I do private coaching. So, but I just do it by word of mouth and I happen to offer it. So I don't treat it like other coaches would. So I've got the keynotes, the private coaching. I have a one-woman show, Who Hijacked My Fairy Tale, that's now been in 6 theaters and is booked now for 8 more theaters. So
So exciting. Good for you.
and now Story Impact Academy. So that's kind of my business model, but really driven by the keynoting aspect of it.
Okay, well, congratulations on all fronts. I did not know that your one woman show had expanded.
Ah,
And you've lived it through COVID, and so many things have.
Jane, I launched it. The premiere was in January of 2020. We did the first show and then everything shut down. But there's silver linings to everything. We also got a lot of attention because now they weren't booking, so more people could go check me out. So there you go, bright side to everything.
There you go. And I know how much work goes in, because you've told me how much work goes into a one woman show. So amazing that you have come back from that even stronger. Okay, so today we're talking about good to epic. In presentation skills, lots of people are good, some are even great, and we're talking about how to move to epic in your presentation. So we've laid out, and actually you gave me these tips for my book, The Wealthy Speaker 3.0, plug for the book. So people are going to be able to see them in the fall in writing. But let's start with tip number one, which is you've got to have a really strong idea. Talk about that as a good idea, good speaker, and then let's move it to epic.
And I'm speaking from the speaker's perspective, Jane. So if it ever, anytime you want to push back and give it to me from, because you've had the buyer's perspective on this. So everybody, I'm talking from the speaker's perspective. And that's a very, we only have that perspective, and we have to remember that we only see it from where we sit and what we've done that's worked for us. And I want to also say, based on what Jane just said, going from good to epic, that you've seen a lot of speeches, and you know that the majority of them that you see just sort of get lost in the shuffle after a year or two. And then there's the ones that
you don't remember them.
Right? You don't. So for your own homework, think about those speeches you still are remembering and why. So this is kind of what I did in putting the tips together. So yes,
Okay.
it starts with a really strong idea, which to me, you might be like, well, duh, but it's not just a bunch of tips cobbled together.
Okay.
But one, to borrow from TED Talks, one really strong idea worth spreading. It's this philosophy that encompasses what you teach and encourages them to hang on to this new perspective to a problem or the desire they seek. It's, what is your idea worth spreading?
What is your idea worth spreading? Okay, so if we were to ratchet up,
Yep.
ratchet it up,
Yeah.
what makes it epic?
Okay. What makes it epic is make it sound sexy.
Okay.
Different from anything they've heard before. Disrupt the status quo. I don't know if that's sexy anymore, but oh, well, anyway, sorry.
Disruption is sexy, actually.
Okay.
Look at
Okay.
all the businesses that are so successful because
Okay.
of
And
disruption.
eventually it won't be anymore as everybody starts doing it, but connect it to the hot topic of the day. Now, here's an example of sexy, in my opinion, anyway. My
Okay.
program was first called Hanging On to Humor When Life Doesn't Go the Way You Planned. Okay, that works. When I wanted to make it relevant to the client, I changed it to Who Hijacked My Healthcare System. It's a
Okay.
sexier title. It's an easy tweak you can make to language that goes from good to epic.
Okay.
Makes sense?
So, who hijacked my healthcare system, especially if you're an audience in healthcare? That's exactly what we want is for somebody to say, I know exactly what you're going through right now. And
Yeah.
so that little the word hijacked
Yeah.
is potent, so we have to obviously be aware of that. But it's working for you in the way because you also use it in Who Hijacked My Fairy Tale
Right.
as well.
And I should make that clear to those who don't
Yes.
know that already. My first book was called Who Hijacked My Fairy Tale. And
Mhm.
so I was kind of, and when I went from just hanging on to humor to Who Hijacked My Fairy Tale alone, it
Mhm.
had a massive change. People to this day love that title. Even with hijack being in it, I have not had one person. The only times people have changed it is when we thought it might be too chickish and we've made it more, a little bit more male and female. But then when I made it Who Hijacked My Healthcare System,
Yeah.
again, it added that relevancy and made it
And
even
when
sexier.
you're talking healthcare, I mean, nobody's really thinking about terrorism or anything like that. So I don't think that's especially problematic. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go through your programming and especially your titles and ask yourself, is this problematic? So we actually have had a system called Ready, Aim, Fire for
Yeah.
many, many moons. And people have said to us, maybe only on a few occasions, fire is kind of combative. So we've actually changed it Ready, Aim, Launch. And it made sense
Yeah.
anyway to change it to launch. And so we didn't do it necessarily to cave into political
Yeah.
correctness, but
It's your own choice.
we're
It's your
aware.
own, it's not going to be black and white ever.
Yeah.
It's your own. I've retired jokes because somebody said, look at how that could be looked at. And I went, okay, yeah, you're right. And I had to make a decision. And sometimes I didn't. Um, and here's a great example too. And I don't know if I'm calling out anybody, but I had one friend who she was working on her book and I was like, oh my God, you've got to call it Bulletproof.
Mm.
That is a great title. It's related to your story. You were held at gunpoint, boom,
Oh,
boom, boom. And she was like, no, 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 will not, cannot, personally don't like it. And I of course I respect that. She
yeah.
chose not to.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that's a good title.
Yeah.
Sure enough, now somebody's come along and used it for sales
Mm. Yes.
and created the whole brand around it. Does
Yeah.
that, I don't think that makes one right or wrong.
No.
It's going to come to a personal choice anyway. It's yes, but you were right,
What
Jane. You have to look at it and make that decision.
you
You
have to do
have to
it
think about it.
right for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I love tip number 2 because it's show them that you get them.
Yeah.
And I really think a lot of people can put more emphasis on this, more intentionality, let's say, onto this.
Sure. Um, and by the way, on that one we just said, just have an idea worth spreading, a philosophy, and make the idea connect to them and their industry even better.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're talking about a good speech shows them that you get them, and that I think you already understand and illustrate the problems they have, how that's making them feel, what
Mhm.
desires they have, and how that's making them feel. And the feel is important there too. This isn't what you think they need, or even the meeting planner. It's about
Mhm.
tapping into their story and what motivates them. What does your audience care about? How can you get to know them? Now, that's what I think every good speaker should be doing already, is show them that you get what they're wishing for.
Yes, and I think this comes from doing good research ahead of time. And there's a lot more we could get into that, making them the heroes of your stories, etc. But let's talk about what takes it from good to epic.
Um, is going beyond just telling them. I mean, we've seen somebody say, "Oh, your jobs are hard. You had to do that." I always say, show me, don't tell me. So if you can illustrate that you get how hard life is from where they sit, it'll be more meaningful. For example, this is a hard one. When I want to illustrate how people self-sabotage with their inner script, I open my speech by talking to myself in a mirror.
Which I think is so brave.
I love it. I love it. It's very brave. And I don't do it for every audience, but the point is, I'm not saying everybody needs to open talking to a mirror. I'm not even saying you need to do brave things. I'm saying, show me that you understand their pain instead of just telling me. You've seen speakers before that sort of check off the box for saying, it must be hard. And they're not tapped into that. Find a way to illustrate life from where they sit.
Give me 30 seconds of you talking to yourself in the mirror. What might you say?
I did it the other day. I had a keynote and it was virtual. And when they introduced me, I went, "Is this thing on? Where is it? Bill, how do I turn it? Oh, wow. This is like a mirror. Oh no, we haven't started yet." God, all these people staring at me. They're gonna wait for me to say something that's gonna change their lives. Probably shouldn't have had that third margarita. Got another hair growing out of my chin. Lord, if I get another one, I can braid them. See, and I did the whole opening, and then I just kind of went, "Oh, we're live. It's running right now."
So, okay, for those of
Right.
you who are listening to this without the video, you can
Oh, that's right. We don't
watch
have.
this on YouTube, by the way. Kelly's face came uber close into the camera, and it was very funny. Thank you for demonstrating that. That was
Well,
more than
I didn't think about it being podcast and they wouldn't be able to see, but I just have a conversation. I'm like, look at all these people. Da, 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 da. I just talk to myself and then I spin it and segue it in.
look at what and sometimes we are so hard on ourselves, and I think for you to amplify that is just so okay, she gets me. I say some really
Yes. Oh,
awful
I feel like, I'll turn to the audience. I'll say, "What's that voice telling you when you look in the mirror and why does it matter?" And we're off. Now, not everybody's going to be that brave. Um, um, I did it for, I could go in front of a group of alcohol, ABC stores are the alcohol stores in our area. I spoke to their managers. I
things.
opened up with this just funny little bit about how thankful I am for ABC stores and what they did for me during COVID. And it was tongue in cheek and it was cute, and it kind of spun into, I know your jobs are hard and I know this, and, it must be like this and da, 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 da. And I was showing them. I was showing them in a different way. You could also show them by having a story that says, thank you, nurses. Your jobs are hard. Okay, that's just telling them. My sister's a nurse. And I
Mhm.
remember her saying, da 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 da. You're just taking that extra step to say, I get you and I get what you're going through. And some people don't even say it.
I remember,
Anyway,
I remember her walking in after a 12-hour shift with the marks from the masks on her face and da 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 da. Like
yeah,
you're really demonstrating it beautifully then. All
yeah.
right. Moving on to number three, what a clear understanding of your style. Talk a little bit about what's it, from a good perspective, and then we'll flip over to epic.
Yeah. And understand too that I look at things, I like to, as an artist. I
Hmm.
look at websites like an album cover, and there's that whole you, me, it, you're selling you, it, and them. You, the artist, it, the music, and them, what they're buying, the kind of songs that they like, whatever. So that's kind of how I think of style in a way for us. So are you lots of humor with a light, relevant message? I mean, that works. That's plenty. That's for some people. Are you deep content with a lot of interaction? Are you facilitating a group conversation with tips woven in? Do you play games and crack jokes? Are you take off the face and get real approach to a subject? Are you touching and heartfelt? Are you a combination of Tony Robbins and Oprah? I believe, Jane, that no matter what your topic, consider that you're that artist on that stage. Now, unless you're a training company where your face really is not what you're selling. I mean, and that's important to note. That's different because there's no identity attached to you. For many of us, the brand falls apart if you take Kelly Swanson out of it. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. So understanding your style, man, have I not believed this any more than now at where I am in my career. Right. Understanding your style will keep you from reinventing the wheel. Every time you write a speech, it will make it easier to sell and more marketable if you can show people what they're going to get. The style is what sets you apart from every other speaker. Now, that's what every speaker, I believe, should have a good understanding of their style, and not what the style should be. I spent so many years going, well, maybe I need to be a trainer, or maybe I need to be this, or maybe I need to be like that person. No. And I got to this point where they gave me that award and I looked back and I went, I should have just chosen what I wanted to be and gone with it. And not tried to keep thinking how I needed to change my style. All right. So that's what I think a good one. Now, we're not even talking epic yet.
I want to just weave the word authentic in there, because I think when you truly land on your most authentics, I think when you first get in the industry, it's very easy to start to absorb a little piece of this person's style, a little piece of this person's style, and then you start to lose yourself in the mix. And so when you truly step into your most authentic self, then great. So I wonder, there was an example. So moving into epic.
Well, I want to say one thing about that.
Okay.
You can't sell yourself as just an authentic speaker.
Okay.
So I would challenge you. I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, and go one step further and be able to define what that authentic style is and looks like. But I agree with you 1,000% when you step into your authenticity, and it doesn't have to be pirouettes and flips and music, and you can simply speak from the heart about what means something to you, and you're there.
So when we level it up to epic, talk about Pride's Hollow and how you step fully into your most authentic self when you're there.
This will freak some people out, right? Because they'll be like, "This is not fair. I'm not going to."
Everybody will go this far. Caveat.
No, and what you have to understand is this is what I wanted to do all along. I was the kid who got picked on and who bullied. Sorry, I'm kind of emotional. I don't know why when I think about it. And I zipped myself up in an imaginary town with a group of people. I created a story I could live in. And actually moving forward in my keynotes, it's going to become the story. And what was my refuge became my art. And so I've spent my whole life knowing I was supposed to tell y'all this story. So, but to make it just an example of a unique way to illustrate your style, it's different. I will challenge anybody to find somebody who's doing what I'm going to be doing. And that's not, you don't get more points for that. I'm just saying that charges me up. I'm embracing the fact of my Pride's Hollow. Okay. It's my second theater show. So I know where it's going with that. I turned my newsletter into the Pride's Hollow Gazette. Okay. That was a bold, I am rebranding myself, not changing anything else I do, but I'm putting it all under, that's my second job, as I'm editor of the Gazette. So you get your Gazette as the newsletter, and it's very real to me. And then you get a black and white copy on your place at the keynote. So, and then when I'm in my keynote, the phone rings and people are calling me with the stories they want me to put in the Gazette. So it gives me a reason to tell you, Earl, I can't talk. I'm talking supply chain people. Yes, I'm speaking to supply chain. No, I don't know exactly what it is they do. I don't know, helping you. I do a whole customized bit for customize that. I hang up, and yes, I do this right on stage. And then I say, y'all, in addition to a speaker, I'm also editor of the magazine, putting their stories in, and you got to hear what happened in our town, because it all started with a letter. And so I'm telling you the story about we all got these letters in our town asking what we would do if we were brave. And this is my story. I want to tell you the stories of what these people did. They're episodes, they're shorts, they're stories in my keynote, and they can be written to fit the audience. They become my material, but then I pause, and this is the last thing I'll say. I don't want to go too deep into it. Then I pause and I'll say, speaking of the voices, I'll tell my story also of being a kid with you don't realize that these two stories I'm telling, you don't realize, I'll tell this, my story about having these voices and these characters in my head. And then I stop and I go, let's talk about the voices for a minute. And I stopped. I did this in a 90-minute virtual keynote. I stopped and said, we're going to talk about how you rewrite voices, and went deep into content. If it had been a different kind of client, I would have gone deep into, let's talk about how story changed our town and how you can influence more through story. And then we go back into it. So that's an example. And I'm telling you that it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Do not try this at home. Know what you're doing. But doesn't it sound cool and delicious? And keep in mind, this has been written because I shouldn't say the big stage opportunities. We shouldn't be thinking, and some of my biggest clients only had 11 people in there, but this is the kind of thing that you're going to want at your national conference to open or to close. It's got as much entertainment as it does content.
It's like a one-woman show in a keynote. But let's give a lightened up version of this.
Yeah.
Bernice Fly Girl Armour.
Yep.
Is a African-American female fighter pilot, if I have that right. I may not have her actual role.
I can't remember exactly. I always say fighter pilot, but
military pilot. I'm pretty sure it's a fighter pilot. And so she comes out maybe in a flight suit. That is a lightened up version of her kind of knowing who she is and walking out like the badass that she really is onto stage.
Yes, I call it your wow factor. And sometimes there's more than one. It could just be that you come in from a different place on stage, or you sit. I never forget the year, because it was such an aha for me. I watched, African American. He worked at Disney. Yeah, his name escapes me, but I'll never forget. He gave his whole speech sitting in a wingback chair at the NSA convention, and I went, I could not stop thinking about what a different impact and experience he created because he sat in a wingback chair instead of standing up.
Wow.
Simon Bailey.
Oh,
That's who
Simon
it was.
Bailey.
So there you go. It doesn't have to be, but and going right back to what the point is, it's your style.
Okay.
It's your style.
So be thinking about what is your authentic style and how do you demonstrate that more for people. Okay. So number 4 is a clear understanding of your substance. What's that from the good perspective?
Now, I know that some people have a relevant message. They're given a keynote, and I think there's a difference in, do you want me to go heavy into content? Or do you want me to bring a light, relevant message? And when I started iterating that with I don't know if that's the right word, with my clients, it was easy for them to go, oh, just give us a light message. And then that released me. But now I'm talking about your substance. I'm talking about your content. And even your messaging should have this. What solution are you selling to their problem? Whether it's one concept or 20, do you have a good grasp of your curriculum?
Right.
Or are they just random points that you're making? Or do you really have a clear path to a destination?
The fact that they are all glued back to one strong idea is so important. And I think structure and having very intentionally crafted messages is really where your brilliance shines through, because you tend to tie things all together. Now let's talk about how to make that epic.
Sure. And you're right. I believe in having a solid structure that makes a persuasive argument. Underneath the Pride's Hollow stuff, there will still be we're in the business of persuasion. This is the problem we have. If we don't fix it, we're relying on data. That's going to be evident.
Okay.
You see, they're different layers. So I know solidly what my content is and the progression I need to take people. But let's say we want to make it even epic. I think every good speaker should understand what understand their content. Now, to make it epic, sell the transformation and the end result. Wrap, and notice we're not just talking about, I know you said what makes a good keynote, but in the key, there's just a lot in selling your company and selling your inside the keynote. There's a lot of overlap. A lot of the language you're going to use on your website, it's going to be the same argument I'm going to have you make in your keynote. So follow me here. These can work in both places. Sell the transformation and the end result. Wrap your curriculum, your content, your talking points, whatever, into one bucket. Best advice, not that I exaggerate, but one of the best pieces of advice was when Doug Stevenson came to me and said, stop selling me everything you know about story. Sell me a system, sell me a method, sell me a formula, sell me 4 steps to this, 5 pillars to that. Don't sell me everything you know. Sell me the system you have created. People love to buy a system. Even when you're giving it in your keynote, they love to receive a system. Do you see? It's a more organized, packaged way for them to get their information. For example, I used to tell people I would come teach them the power of story. Then I changed it to, I will come teach you my story formula, which is a 3-step system to take you from learning about emotional connection to finding the story idea to crafting it out to powering it up. Well, that's 4, whatever, you get it. So, all right.
Numbers. But we really do love 3s, do we not?
We love 3s. We love 3s. And you can change them every time you get a new job.
Yeah.
You can change them based on what they needed from you. It doesn't have to live in infamy.
Yes, it doesn't have to be written in stone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a clear understanding of your substance, package, and can I just say, we need to sell our systems. We need to also sell the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow constantly rather than getting too far into the weeds, because really we want people to follow us to where we're going.
Yes, and you want them to buy in.
Mm-hmm.
I just watched a TED Talk. I've watched several this week as I work with people in their TED Talks. I see this a lot in TED Talks. I see a lot of information and you get to the end and you can't really understand what that main thing was they wanted you to get. And it wasn't given to you in an organized way. So start watching TED Talks because they're shorter and they're quicker, and you'll see that even in a short amount of time. I walked by going craving, if you'd understood better, like I'll go back to this person now and say, tell me, what was the main point? What was the problem? What's the solution? When you force people to start looking at that, then everything becomes a lot clearer. Does that make sense, Jane, or did I just muddy it up even more?
Totally. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Now, listen, we're going to break this up into 2 different sessions. So I want you to know that you are not going to want to miss part 2 of moving your presentations from good to epic. So stay tuned and we will be right back.